Welcome to another episode of the Evolving the World of Work. Today I have a very special guest, Brian Elliott, who's one of Forbes' Future of Work 50. He's a speaker and leadership advisor who combines 25 years of leadership experience as a startup CEO and executive at Google and Slack, with insights built while leading the Future Forum, a think tank that's focused on the future of work. Brian's work enables leaders to build a future of work that's better for people and organizations, rooted in flexibility and leveraging technology. Is rooted in research combined with storytelling and practical and tactical advice, which is what this podcast is all about. He's the best-selling author of How the Future Works, leading flexible teams to do their best work of their lives. And I'll tell you what, I've been reading that book, I've been listening to that book, and it is phenomenal. Highly recommended.
Nice.
He's also a LinkedIn top voice, has been published in the Harvard Business Review, Charter, Fast Company, Fortune, Sloan Management Review, Time, as well as cited extensively in Axios, Bloomberg, CNBC, The Economist, Forbes, the FT, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, among many others, and is a speaker at a wide range of events and podcasts. But most importantly, Brian is also the proud dad of 2 young men and 1 middle-aged dog. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brian Elliott to the Evolving World of Work podcast. Brian, so glad to have you here.
Glad to be here with you, Dave, and thank you for that lengthy intro. My own fault, but good grief. Yeah, that's been fantastic.
Yeah. I was like, you speak on stage as much like I do, and then when you get there, they read out this massive bio. The first thing I always look at it and said, my mother wrote that.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to make sure that I got the Wall Street Journal piece in there because that's got lift. So
anyway, now I know you love sharing research-backed insights combined with case studies from companies that you've supported and worked on with them on a variety of future work topics. So I'm really looking forward to diving into this, and we'll get into that in a moment. But can you just share a bit about your journey, Brian, and what led you to focus on the future of work within the context of the evolving world of work itself?
Yeah, so dialing my head back a little bit, I started out in tech about 25 years ago in startup mode. And to be honest, I was kind of an arrogant dude coming out of consulting, but quickly learned through the school of hard knocks that phrase culture eats strategy for breakfast was really true. That if I was going to make my organization, my team, my startup successful, I really had to find a way to bring people together, to get them aligned, to get them marching in a common direction, and people coming from diverse and different perspectives. So learned that in my startup days, learned it again when I went to Google and took over a team that was kind of problematic and challenged, learned it again when I did something similar at Slack. And so just spent a lot of time figuring out how to make productive cultures out of organizations and how to bring together diverse groups of people. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, had this great opportunity to start up a thing called Future Forum, which was research around a lot of those same factors of what makes teams more effective, but doing it during the pandemic and post-pandemic, when we all went through this sort of massive upheaval that questioned a lot of conventional wisdom. So I've had a lot of fun just sort of pulling together research threads with sort of great examples from companies that are investing in new ways of working. They really do think improve people's lives as well as really lead to better results at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's quite interesting how much of an epiphany many people had through that period of time. And it's funny, and you would have experienced this without a doubt, that a lot of the stuff that we accept as normal has been around for years. Like I remember leaving Canada in 2009 and starting I was using back then. Remember Skype? And my Skype name was My Online Coach, and I thought, well, I'll move to Australia. I'll serve my clients online. I'll just serve them there. But they'd like, oh no, Dave, we'd prefer it if you were here and all that. And here we are now, and it was 2019, 2020 when the pandemic came through. Everybody's and it's just like, I just like to think I was ahead of my time. But
and you were.
So Brian, what drives your passion for the future of work, or evolving the world of work in today's workplace? What drives that passion now?
I think for me, it really is about the fact that I like opening up people's eyes to new ways of working that are actually really helpful. I think the challenge that we have in a lot of organizations is leadership is just too far removed from the day-to-day of what happens inside the organization. they've been at it for a long time. They themselves are obviously highly successful if you get out into the C-suite. But the conventional wisdom that they learned along the way is stuff that really worked for them, right?
Yeah.
And it's also stuff that worked in a time frame that's very different, both in terms of demographics, psychographics, the role of technology,
Mm.
and kind of competition. And so what happens is a lot of people get left behind in that equation.
Yeah.
And so part of my belief set is that there's all this tremendous sort of untapped potential of people from different backgrounds that have historically sort of been left behind by organizations that, we can make the world of work better for everybody, especially including them. But it also is just like all this amazing talent that you could tap into as an organization. So that's at the heart of it, that's a big part of what drives me. And it is,
Yeah.
I really do think this is an opportunity to improve people's lives because we spend so much of our time working.
Yeah. One of our other guests, Dane Gronveld, he said that we're overdoing work. And that was
I like
so
that.
poignant. Like it's like actually that's what we've titled his episode. We are overdoing work.
So it's
Um,
pretty good.
and I love that. And obviously, so Circle Leadership, our organization, we want. Can you imagine a world where work actually positively impacts people and the planet?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
wouldn't
Kind
that
of
be
crazy
amazing?
talk, Dave.
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely can. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It would be great. So, was there a pivotal moment or experience that actually shaped your approach to leadership and work and culture in this?
Yeah. Going back to that the startup days that I was describing, I think I was about 6 or 9 months into my first startup when my head of people turned to me and said, "Brian, you're kind of an asshole." Um, and she was right, and she was right to call me on it. The thing that I was tending to do was, I carried myself with all the arrogance of a consultant. I've been trained, as a consultant to be seldom wrong, but never in doubt, right?
Right.
So, as a consultant, that kind of makes sense because you're this 20-something-year-old showing up in front of 50-year-old executives in a company pretending
Yeah.
like you know something, right?
Yeah.
And that did a complete disservice for me in startup mode because my peers really didn't want to work with me because I carried myself that way still. And
Yeah.
so that bit of feedback, which I got it, it was not an easy message, and I certainly wrestled with it some, but really was super helpful in kind of helping me reset and think about like, all right, if I do want to, accomplish things, I'm going to need to find a way to do it as a group, and I'm going to need to
Yeah.
find a way to, be a little more vulnerable myself about
Yeah.
what I do and don't know, what I can and can't do, and invite other people into the conversation. So that was a pretty big kickstart.
So I'm just chuckling to myself because it's pretty much the exact same as one of what I would call my pivotal moment too. It was like it's what I call my help me Rhonda moment. There was I used to work in a bank and I was a supervisor in the bank, and one of the ladies, one of the part-time tellers there, her name was Rhonda Dolinsky, and there was two or three other mothers who were part-time tellers that obviously came in between 9 and 3, did their shifts, and they came and pulled me aside. Rhonda pulled me aside as the spokesperson for the group one day and said, "Dave, we really love you. You're a really nice guy, but do you know what we call you?" And I'm like, "No, what do you call me?" And they go, "Corporal Claire, Little Hitler, Dictator Dave." And you can't treat us like that. We know you're
Yeah,
a nice guy. We know you're that, but you have to understand, like, and we had this really great dialogue. And like, oh, from that moment, I realized, this is when I think about, a human first, employee second.
yeah,
For me, and
yeah,
like, how do we
yeah.
bring humanity back in the workplace and treat people like humans and understand what it
Yeah.
is about them and care about them deeply as a person. What are their goals? So I didn't understand I knew what my goals were and I know what the business goals were, but I didn't give a pardon the expression, I didn't give a
Yeah.
shit about what their goals were. I had results to achieve.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. We got numbers to hit. We got
yeah,
sales to
yeah,
get
and
done. Yeah.
I learned more about leadership in that one moment there, and probably be unjust to say it didn't shape, but it did. It totally shaped how I look at even our definition of leadership and how I view people in the workplace today. So
It's a gift. It really is.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. So Rhonda, if you're ever out there and you hear this, thank you so much for that special moment in my life.
Yeah. And Mariah has heard this one from me before as well. So yeah.
Yeah. So, I would really love to talk to you about, the key changes, what you would see, but what I really want to understand, what I'd really like you to share with us, Brian, is what do you see as the biggest challenge for leaders trying to evolve their workplace culture now in today's world?
I think the real challenge that a lot of people are facing is their willingness to open up their own minds to different ways of working,
Yeah.
and to listen to their own employees, who probably have some pretty spectacular ideas that actually are not against your interest as an organization. They're actually for the interest of your organization.
Yeah.
But if you are sort of stuck in a rut of, I know best, then that's a real challenge. Related to that is I think a lot of leaders still carry that mindset that I've struggled with myself over the years, which is you're expected to have all the answers, right?
Yeah.
You're the senior person. You're supposed to have
Yep.
all the answers, and that's what makes vulnerability hard. And I've worked with executives on this in terms of things like I've heard people say, "Hey, look, if I say I don't have all the answers, then how is it I'm supposed to really drive my team?" It's like I need you to separate two things in your mind.
Hmm.
One is your ability to paint a picture for where we're going and the heights we're going to reach. And the other is your ability to invite your team into the conversation about what the path is that we use to get there,
Yeah.
right? And how do you be both inspirational but also inviting of that engagement? But too many executives today, I think, are still stuck in like, I need to have all the answers, and therefore the answers are the things that worked for me in the past, and that's what I'm going to apply to our work model going forward.
Yeah. And like that's what I guess I refer to as the paradox of success. What got me here won't get me there. Is like this is what I've
Yep.
done to get me here, and so I'm going to keep doing that to get to there. But when the environment around you is shifting or transforming or changing or accelerating rapidly, and when you think of all the factors in that environment, is you just can't keep doing that. It just
Yeah,
doesn't work.
exactly.
Yeah, I've had
Exactly. It is
with
the
my dad.
organizational Peter principle at work
Yeah,
more broadly, right? So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. My dad wasn't allowed to do things when he was a young apprentice, so why should young apprentices today be allowed to do that?
yeah, exactly,
Just because
exactly.
they're willing to do it, and you weren't, and
Yeah.
it's just times have changed, and yeah, so it's fascinating. So, can you give us an example? And I know you would have plenty of them. A success story or a case study where embracing these sort of concepts or this kind of a change or evolution led to meaningful outcomes in the workplace.
Yeah, there's a ton of them when you think about like traditional ways of working that organizations have had. I'll give you an example is we tend to think that innovation comes from water coolers and whiteboards, right? Like
Yeah,
if I've got a whiteboard and I get everybody together, we'll come up with great ideas. There's academic evidence that shows that's actually typically groupthink, right? What usually
yeah,
happens is somebody who looks like me shows up in front of the whiteboard and they're holding a pen, for dear life, and they're going to conduct an orchestra, and drive you through a set of ideas, an ideation process. We did this ourselves on the Future Forum team, this process that I heard about from Adam Grant first called brainwriting, which is
yeah,
we would get the research report before it came out, right? 120 some odd pages of analytics that came out of it. And instead of pulling everybody together and saying, hey, let's talk about this and brainstorm on it, we would give people a week to spend 2 hours, notifications off, heads
hmm,
down, going through it, pull out 3 to 5 of your observations that you think are the most important messages that you found in this. Don't share it with anybody until we get together. At the beginning of a session where we're all together, throw them all together into a pot. Now let's see what comes out of it.
yeah,
And let's figure out like what are the most salient ideas that come from that. So that's a tactical example, but I've seen
yeah,
people use those types of processes to get more ideas out of teams on a continual basis. And you can
yeah,
take like that approach of like intentional design of work and apply it to, how salespeople learn from each other. You can apply it to, any of a variety of other settings in terms of how do you build community, how do you drive gatherings, everything else too.
yeah. And I think that's a really powerful and valuable lesson for anyone listening to this podcast right now. Is that we run an exercise when we talk about values in an organization. Here's how we think around here. Not telling you what to think, but how to just lens of how to think around here. And
Yeah.
then what we do is we get people to come up with what their thought was, and then by themselves, and they're not allowed to look at anybody else. So I do a little exercise with people when we're teaching people how to lead, live, and love your values in the workplace. And you're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to look. You have to do it with your eyes closed. You have to run through this
That's
exercise
cool.
so that they have to filter all that. And we just talk about how it's a paper folding exercise, and they come up with this creative solution. And then the key to it is because you had to run it through the way we think around here, but not telling you what to think. You had to take all your experience and put it through to that, and we come up with all these different creative ideas. Now you would think that they would all be the same, but they're not. They're so different.
Yeah.
And then you can throw them, to your point, throw them in the middle and look at them
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And I think it's really powerful that a lot of organizations don't appreciate the latent or untapped talent and abilities and the creativity and the curiosity and the imagination, the intuition of the human sitting right there that they're technically already paying for
Yeah. That's
in
right.
payroll to be there. And,
That's right.
man, it's so powerful. So what did Adam call it? Brain writing?
Brainwriting. Yeah,
Okay.
brainwriting was
Yeah.
the concept. I
Yeah.
don't think he's the originator either, but he's the
Yeah.
first one I heard it from when we did a panel with him
Yeah. Yeah.
in
No, it's just a really cool
2020.
name because I
So
saw
yeah,
thinkubating the
yeah,
other day. It's
no,
like,
that's pretty
put
good.
them into a thinkubator. And I guess, yeah, because one of our, things I love to really challenge leaders on is that we've got to make sure that the best idea wins, not the boss's idea,
That's right. That's right.
right? And you don't know where the best idea will come from because that idea could lead to that idea, right? So
Yep.
speaking of
Exactly.
which, so let's talk about innovation then. So how do you
Yeah.
foster then innovation and creativity within a team, especially in a let's call it a flexible working environment, not just a remote or hybrid environment. So let's use your, flexible work where work happens when
Yeah.
work happens.
Yep.
So how do you foster innovation and creativity within a team in that environment?
Yeah. So the single most important thing in terms of fostering innovation is trust. It's psychological safety, right? It's the willingness of somebody on your team to share the heretical idea or the radical thing. And that's the reason why most whiteboarding sessions end up being groupthink in the first place is the person who's holding the pen is probably the senior most person who's been there the longest. The people who probably have the most radical ideas are probably the ones that are the most junior or the ones that are newest to the organization, or maybe they just don't look like the boss, right? So they're going to sit on their hands.
Yeah.
So whether it's brainwriting as a tool to do it, whether it's you're building trust in a team simply by how you operate with each other, getting to know people as a human being,
Yeah.
that sort of fostering of trust is really essential in terms of a key ingredient for making it happen. The other is, I think that we all feel this. One of the things that does happen is chance collisions at a water cooler are really unlikely, but there's an important part in any organization past some minimum scale of how do you build weak ties, right? How do you create connections across the organization, and how do you make that happen on a regular basis? And so you got to think about things that you can do to orchestrate that. So I've seen companies actually build intentional programs for we're going to find a way from almost a top-down perspective to coordinate team gatherings and cross-team gatherings so that people are co-located, even if it's for a couple of days once a month, to talk about the business, to talk about idea generation, but also, even more importantly, go grab lunch together,
Yeah.
get to know one another, right, and share those thoughts and ideas because you're trying to build up those weak links. And then the third one, in terms of that sort of level of weak tie generation, is think about the role that digital tools plays in this today. Because your team is distributed all over the place, whether it's Slack or Teams or something else, that's probably where most of your communication is happening in the first
Yeah.
place. And executives tend to think about that as a productivity tool, right? And they think
Yeah.
about it as the important stuff that's happening in it from their perspective is, the sales channel where you're trying to close an account. The cool, interesting stuff happens over in these social channels.
Yeah.
And social channels, prior to the pandemic, I think a lot of people were like, oh, that's silly stuff. We don't need it. All of a sudden, they became important for connection, but they also do a really big other thing is they create weak ties. So, for example, the channel you've got inside your organization that's about, sneakerheads, people who actually have a common affinity for, the latest Nikes coming out.
Yeah.
There's a group of people in your organization that do that span the globe, that span all kinds of gender, racial differences, that span all kinds of functional differences. And the people doing that aren't necessarily working on the same project. But if I'm trying to find somebody who actually is working on, that new product being developed out of the UK because I've got an idea, I might find them through the Sneakerheads channel because I happen to know Jane, who's working on that project because of that social connection that we made. And
Yeah.
so digital ends up playing this funky role these days of promoting weak ties that span an organization that I think we used to attribute to, the office and chance collisions in a very different way.
Yeah, I think that's really cool because I remember when all the obviously online, whether it be Zoom, Teams, whatever platform you were using, um, I looked at it and I thought this is a window into humanity.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it, because we're starting to see people in their homes. Like someone, even with a lot of our clients, I would have obviously Zoom calls, and we'd be sitting there, and all of a sudden a cat would jump up on their lap. I'm like, oh, I didn't know you had a cat, and whatever, get to know about these people or see some things in the background and what's up on their shelves and all these sorts of things. You just get a little window into that person's humanity and like their world, and
Exactly.
I think that's taken for granted. Um,
Yeah.
and in the end, especially where we're going, which will lead into the next question I have for you is looking at, like when we think about the workplaces, the future and everything like that, we're not going to all of a sudden come back together all the time, right? Like it's not going
Right.
to be that way inclined. So we need to get to know each other a little bit better and understand who we are as people.
That's
Um,
right.
and I think that's a really powerful exercise for people to do. And then if we look at it through that lens, it all of a sudden becomes a powerful tool for us to have those, because we're not going to have water cooler moments anymore. What are the water cooler moments if we don't have everyone in a building where there's a water cooler we can go and chat it, or the coffee machine, or if
Exactly.
someone's going to come up with
Exactly.
rename their Slack channel the water cooler, and anytime when you want to go, like or the coffee
Yeah.
machine,
People do that. I've seen people do that. One of the
yeah,
things I talk with leaders about is people will say things like, when we're together, we'd always at least have the chat about what'd you do this weekend, or
yeah,
did you see the game,
yeah,
or what do you think about Beyonce's new album? And we're just missing that. I'm like, why are you missing it? You have a weekly staff meeting, right? Well, yeah, I have a weekly staff meeting. Why don't you kick off every staff meeting with a social question, an icebreaker, right?
yeah,
Something that can be simple. I used to do this all the time with my team. Favorite was what's your worst haircut ever, right?
yeah.
Um, where do you stand on pumpkin spice latte? That was a pretty good one
Oh,
too. Like got a spicy conversation off of that one.
yeah,
But I think the thing is we all think that because we're stuck in all these virtual meetings, they all have to be hyper efficient.
yeah,
And look, I'm not a fan of waste of time in meetings,
yeah.
but that social connection with your team can happen this way too. You just have to foster it.
Yeah, but if you understand that social connection within your team is a high payoff activity,
Yeah,
then it's not a waste of time,
that's right. That's right.
right?
Exactly.
And just one thing, just for your benefit as well, and we've other guests, we don't use the S word here, the staff.
Staff,
Yeah, we don't
staff
use that
meeting.
word anymore because they're the servants, the maids, the butlers,
Good point. Thank
and
you.
so we use team or
Team
people,
meeting.
humans,
Yep.
whatever you want to call it. We don't. Our clients aren't allowed to use the S word.
I love
Yeah,
that. Thank you.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, because who you so special that you have staff working for you. Even
Yep.
most fanciest of hotels have ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. So they
Oh
realize that
God.
the S word
Yes.
is right. So just a little heads up on that.
Horrible. Horrible.
Right.
No, I
So
appreciate
anytime
that.
I hear the S word,
Yeah, I can see
our
yeah,
team,
the reaction.
it triggers us.
Yep. Understandable.
Um, so let's talk about the future of work. So we're I always tell people we're already in it. This is the present of work is actually the future of work and the future of leadership. But how do you
Yeah.
envision the workplace of the future, say 10 years from now in 2035?
Yeah. The trend line continues to be more flexible for a couple of reasons.
Yeah,
Look, part of this is I've managed what we now call a hybrid team for 22 years, meaning the people on my team showed up for work if they showed up in an office in different cities, right?
yeah,
They weren't all co-located in the first place.
yeah,
What the pandemic did was it opened up people's understanding of what all could be done with a team that was, more often than not remote
yeah,
and more distributed in the first place. And a lot of companies then started actually changing not just their policies, but actually things that are irreversible, like where they hired people,
mhm,
right? So we're coming out of the pandemic in a world where, for a lot of organizations, they're actually way more distributed than they were pre-pandemic. Microsoft's a great case in point. Something like 2/3 of Microsoft's teams pre-pandemic were co-located, meaning manager and everybody who reported to the manager showed up for work in the same building.
yeah,
It's now inverted. 2/3 of Microsoft's teams are actually distributed across multiple cities. And almost every large scale organization has that same thing because distribution of teams allows you to hire more talented people in more locations that are generally more diverse than trying to get everybody in San Francisco, Sydney, Singapore, and London, right?
yeah,
And so that's got a real talent advantage in the first place. And if we know that we can find ways to communicate and collaborate what we're then left with is what's the role that physical space plays for us as well as the digital tools, and how do we balance across those two. And I think what we're seeing trend line out is you're going to see a continued rise of flexibility in various forms, but we're also going to learn how to make the right investments in getting people together for meaningful moments, for stuff that actually matters.
Yeah, awesome. And it leads me right into my next question. Is there any emerging trends right now that you believe will significantly impact the world of work in the coming years? Something
Generative AI would be one of those.
yeah, so let's just, and I know that's something that, for the listeners' benefit. So Brian was a contributor to my new book I'm working on right now, How AI can make workplaces more human. So he has a lot of intelligence in this space, and he also knows a lot of people who know a lot of people. So how do you see that shaping, significantly impacting the world of work in the coming years then?
Yeah, my crystal ball on this is not nearly as good as yours, so I'll leave most of this to you to answer on a long-term basis. I think it's the classic, we overestimate the impact of technology in the short term, and we underestimate its impact in the long term, right?
Yeah.
Meaning sitting here today in 2024, there's a lot of hype about the impact of generative AI that's a bit past the pale. So there's a lot of executives who believe that they're going to be able to get, double-digit percentage efficiency gains in their teams over the course of the next couple of years,
Yeah.
which is really impractical and unlikely, because what actually does get automated is actually, at the end of the day, a fairly small part of what people do on a day in, day out basis. I've worked with several startups where I've said, you're very engineering centric. What does GitHub Copilot do for you? And the answer is it makes us a little bit faster, but mostly we're fast because we know what we're working on next, because we're aligned and we're marching in a common direction.
Yeah.
When you talk to big companies, they're like, we're going to get X% more efficiency gains out of it. Like, no. I actually want to know exactly explicitly what you're getting. And they can't answer the question. So that's the short term, but long term, it's pretty clear that you've got these entire fields of capability that are being augmented. And my sincere hope is that we do everything we can to automate more of the routine, boring crud inside of an organization, right? The fact that figuring out what my time off policy is and how to file a time off request shouldn't be an hour-long exercise, right?
No.
It should be a button that I click. If I
Yes.
can do that, then you end up with happier, more engaged employees who then also have more time to focus on the stuff that, in theory, you're bringing them on board to do in the first place. So it's going to have a lasting and big impact. How broad? We'll find out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, one of the biggest things is if you look at technology over the years, and you've just seen it in the field that you've been working in, I look at the internet, email, all these sort of things have given us to increase our productivity, to help us to be able to, supposedly work less, have actually helped us to work more, not less.
Yes.
I see AI finally as an opportunity for us as humans to work less. I think this is for me, the difference between AI and the internet, and let's use email as a simple example, and all this sort of stuff has just helped us to work more, maybe more effectively, more efficiently, but it was supposed to be saving us time and all this. All that we've done is worked harder and longer now.
Exactly.
I think AI is finally the opportunity for us to do that. Now it's in its infancy and things like that. And I wrote an article about this the other day. It's Chat GPT. It's not analytic GPT. It's not, you can have a conversation with and dialogue. And if you treat it like a teammate or a trainee in your organization, and you need to train it, and it has to work with the parameters, the frameworks of your organization. It needs to understand your purpose, your values, your vision, your mission, like any other team member needs to understand. But what it should do is free us up to do the work that humans must do. To your point, get rid of all that mundane stuff and find information quicker and all this sort of stuff. Because you and I probably grew up in the era of, Brian, you're paid to work, not to think.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? And now I joke with leaders half-heartedly, but really seriously, is like, Brian, you're paid to think. And while you're here, if you have to work, it's okay. Do some work if you need to.
Do a bit of that also. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Do a bit of that as well. Right. And that's the world that we're moving into. So, it's a fascinating thing for me. But I appreciate your insights. So can you give us, let's get into the, actionable, let's action some of these insights here. What's one practical tip that you can offer to the listeners who want to begin to evolve the world of work in their environment, in their workplace today? What's one practical thing they could just start doing?
So one of the things, and this is in our book, which has all kinds of tactical tips
Oh
and
yeah,
ways of
great book
doing
by
it.
the way.
Thank
I'll
you.
put it in
But
the show notes.
one of my favorite tools that you can use at almost any level is a team level agreement, right? So
Yeah,
simply talking out the norms that you've got as a team and how do you operate ends up being really key. And I'll give you one example within that. And it's not, how many days a week we're in the office. It's how do we communicate, which issues, what tools, what hours. So here's an example. Within our team, we actually set what we called core collaboration hours, which is 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. California time
yeah,
for a team that was spread out across North America, was the hours Monday through Thursday that we said we would be available to each other for meetings, for chats, for one-on-ones, for whatever else. That meant you had the freedom to schedule doctor's appointments or kid pickups or focus time outside those hours, but you kind of held that in place for each other. But we also thought through things like, hey, look, we've all got all these tools that we're walking around with, right? All these apps that sit on our phone that go off all kinds of hours, day and night. How do we communicate with each other, and what consists of both an emergency and how we'll tell you? And the answer was, there ain't many emergencies. Here's what that looks like for off-hour communication. And we will text you. So you don't have to pay attention to email or Slack or
mm,
Teams or PagerDuty or anything else like that. This is our mechanism for doing that. That conversation as a team got us the ability to be a little bit more focused on the work that we were doing and put some boundaries in place that I think people need to deal with their lives and not get burnt out.
yeah,
But that's just like one part of like dozens that you can put into a team level agreement. But those conversations as a team can be really productive around how we work together and making ourselves understand each other as well as be more effective.
yeah, yeah. That's sort of team level agreements. It's great. One of the things I'm working on right now to bring out, and I'll let the cat out of the bag, is like trading cards. Like
Yeah,
the old, we used to, and it had
yeah,
all your batting average and whatever, and all like baseball cards and
yeah.
the teams, like what's my communication style, what's my my greatest strengths and like things like that. So we have these trading cards for our team members, so we can sit there and get to know each other, and you can get the deck of all the team members, and you can
I
um,
love that.
yeah,
That's a great like personal user manuals.
yeah,
Is very much the same concept. I've been doing those since my Google days in terms
yeah,
of just helping people understand, it's you can do your zodiac sign if you want to, but it's more
yeah,
important that I know things like I'm a morning person, not a night person,
yeah,
right? Or I've got kid commitments that occur on Thursdays where I'm coaching a soccer team.
yeah,
Um, and I'm a visual learner,
yeah,
not someone who does well in writing. So
yeah,
understanding that about each other is really a good building block for trust and everything else. I love
yeah,
the
yeah.
trading card concept.
Yeah, yeah. So it has a photo of that. They can have like a fun photo of whatever, maybe what their passions or pastimes are. And I remember last time I actually worked as an organization, we had our team photos done, and we had two photos done. One was our professional photo in our company wardrobe or corporate wardrobe, and the other was with whatever your passion was. And
That's
so I was all
fantastic.
dressed up as a golf because golf is one of my passions. So I dressed up as a insane golfer, like an angry golfer, because yeah,
Frustrated Scotsman golfing type of thing. Yeah, like
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, just a couple of questions. So common mistakes. What's one common mistake you see organizations or leaders make when they're trying to adapt to the future of work? And if you can, how can they avoid that mistake?
biggest one is just announcing a policy, thinking that a policy is going to solve any problem, right?
Yeah,
Policies never solve problems. Policies are ways that you put something in place that's a rule that you use to, judge people on, and
yeah,
they tend to also just tick people off, right?
yeah.
And so the other side of this in terms of getting it right is what's the investment you're making in experimentation and iteration. I think
Mm,
one of the most important things, Slack, by the way, was hugely office centric pre-pandemic. I think one of the best things that we did was when we started talking about how we were coming into the future was we said there's no policy around this. We're giving you some principles and guidelines, but importantly, we're going to experiment and iterate. And here's what that looks like. And we should all expect that we're going to have to continually invest behind this to figure out what the right answers are for each other. So the opposite of policy to some degree is continual experimentation to learn what does work.
yeah, isn't it amazing if we could develop learning moments and coaching moments in an organization? One of the things we always talk about is that the faster your organization learns, the faster it evolves, right? So having those discussions, and by creating learning moments and coaching moments, the more moments you allow, the more momentum then your organization has, thus it evolves faster, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So if,
And you got to have ways of sharing them with each other, because the other thing I'll talk with execs about
yeah,
is someone somewhere inside your organization has all the ideas that I've got to,
yeah,
right? They've been doing it with their team over here. Maybe it's a group that you acquired. Maybe it's someone that came in from the outside. It's someone who's just doing things differently inside your organization.
yeah.
Let's find them. Let's encourage them to share what they're doing.
Yeah. So I've got two questions left. One was we wrap up here. How does someone like yourself continue to learn and grow in your field? Are there any specific habits or practices that help you stay ahead? Because it's great to say, oh, we're all savvy to the future of work, but what are you doing to stay in that line?
I'm a fairly voracious reader. I mean, I read all kinds of stuff that comes out, everything from, articles in, the popular press, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, to academic studies and research that comes out. And I just talk to people. And I try to talk to people in companies that are just taking very different approaches across industries to, how they're working, how they're building team engagement, how they're handling technology or offices or whatever else, because I'll share everything that I know with them
Yeah.
too, but I'm going to get something back in return, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, that's an interesting story that I just learned today from Zillow as an example around gatherings. It's like, because then what you're doing is you're aggregating these ideas into sort of new shapes that you can apply in different places.
Yeah, that's awesome. And thank you for sharing it, because it's, if I'm going to master anything, I want to be a master student.
Yeah,
And you know as well as I do that leadership is a process, not a program. You can't learn it in 5 days. So as we continue to develop our leadership capabilities, it's like I've been doing this for 25 odd years in the leadership capacity, but I'm still learning every day.
absolutely.
I mean, I learned so much from reading, your book. It was like phenomenal. It was very insightful. And obviously I'll put the links to that there. So, but, much like you, I listen all the time. And I find when you do that, actually, you synthesize that with all your own learning, and then you allow your mind just to relax and look at putting pieces together. Um, this is how we can continue to evolve the world of work, is if we're all willing to do this together and learn from each other. If anyone here out there thinks they have the answer, they have answers, but not the answer.
That's right. There's no such thing. There's no such
Yeah,
thing
no
as
such
the
thing.
answer. It
Yeah.
doesn't exist.
Right. However, there is one answer to the next question, and that is
Oh
you have
boy.
to pick from 1 to 31 any number that you would like between 1, including 1 and 31. But you must answer that question. Now, this is a bit of the humanity part of our podcast, is getting to know you as a person. So there's
Awesome.
nothing too invasive, but there are some quirky questions in there. So when you're ready, just hit me with a number, and I will.
Let's go with number 7.
Okay. Now, like I said, okay, here's number 7. What is a book that has practically changed your life, and what's the title and why?
Oh my God.
Of all
Turns around,
things,
stares at his own bookshelf. You know, Gödel, Escher, Bach, way back when, because
like
it
Bach, the
tied together.
musician, the
Yeah,
composer?
musician. So Gödel, mathematician,
Yeah,
Escher, artist, Bach, musician.
yeah.
And it's the ties that cut across music and artistry and math, right? And how a
Wow.
lot of these things interrelate. Very, kind of geeky, interesting, wild stuff. I'm trained in statistics and social science and stuff like that. And so it's just one of those things where I just read it and consumed it. And I think I've read that book. It's been at least a decade or two since I did. But early on, that really influenced me a lot, just in terms of thinking about math and stats don't just apply in economics and sort of the harder sciences side of things. There really are interesting things when it comes to music and art too. And those disciplines can sort of teach us different things that are actually related at the end of the day. So I'll go with that one.
Yeah,
As opposed
great.
to a work related book. I've got a dozen of those on the shelf, but they're all great.
Yeah, that I thought you might have picked your own book.
Yeah, well, yeah, How the Future Works is a lovely tome. And by the way, Sheila Subramanian and Helen Cupp, my co-authors on it, are
Yes.
fantastic and actually better writers than I am. So I do highly recommend it, obviously, but
Yeah.
going back, I got to give you something different.
We'll definitely put a link, because it is a phenomenal book, and I've had a privilege of also talking to Helen as well. And yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
thanks you guys for bringing such a great piece, an important piece to the world. If people want to get a hold of you or connect with you or learn more about you, Brian, where can they go?
LinkedIn is the easiest place to
Yep.
find me. I'm real easy to spot there. So Brian Elliott, find me, follow me, hit the connect
I'll,
button.
I'll put the
Yep.
links here for that as well. So, I mean, thank you so much for your time today. Really value, your perspective on evolving the world of work. To me, it's, I'm an adamant believer that it's time to lead different, and only together can we evolve the world of work. And so having special guests like yourself on here sharing your wisdom only, helps further that cause. So thank you very much for your time today.
I've learned just as much from you, Dave. So really appreciate it.
Much
Thank
appreciated.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.